This week, as we've been coming to the texts, and every week we have the news of the world, the calendar, the church calendar, the world calendar, all things coming together. As I've been telling Pastor Friederike, I've been super excited to be the preacher this Mother's Day in the wake of the Supreme Court leak on Roe v. Wade, any number of things where I felt like I was the right man for the job. And so here I am. In a church that believes strongly in access to health care for all people, especially women and the vulnerable. And on this Mother's Day, as we think about the readings that we have this morning, we hear a story about Tabitha, Dorcas, her name is in Greek. We hear all kinds of stories about people who help. And there was something that struck me in these readings that make me think of my mother, mothers in general, that came up throughout these readings as I think about the world around us. One thing in the gospel text, we hear Jesus say, "They will know my voice." And I know that at this point in my life, my mom can say my name in several different ways. And she doesn't have to add any extra words, and I know immediately what the situation is. Is it just my first name? Is it Matt or is it Matthew? Does it go to Matthew Allen? There is not a context where that's a good start to a phrase. When we think about that sense of that voice, right? And we know when a mother has passed, a loved one has passed, we may still, in our more modern era, still even have a voice message, or we hear a video clip, and the sound of that voice suddenly is present to us in a way that brings grief. We think of what people have done through the years to support one another, and we think of Tabitha in the reading today. They were bringing out all of the clothes that she had made, all of the different ways that she had impacted the community, and had gone to the next town to drag Peter over and say, "Peter, see how much we loved her. See how much she loved her community. Is there something you can do?" Now, with all of these things coming together, it's over and against a wider backdrop, right? I don't think I'm the only one who gets up on a given day and wonders how things are going in Ukraine, right? There are a lot of tools that we have as human beings to help and interact with one another. Some of these are not unrelated to healthcare, and we think of all the news in regards to potential changes to Roe v. Wade. But we think of these ways in which we interact, and we think of Ukraine and think of tools that are often like hammers, right? Do we go through life and we replace the screwdriver with this new hammer I just found because it's a great hammer? And then the sandpaper goes because it's taken up too much space, and I found this other great hammer that I like, and I'm putting that in my toolbox. And then, the wrenches are nice, but I was just at the store and I found this other hammer that was really, really great. And pretty soon, as human beings, all we have in our toolbox is hammers. And every problem then becomes a nail. There are times in human history where our tendency to desire punishment for others as a first step rises very, very high. And sometimes it comes out of deep hurt in our own lives. And when I was thinking of this image of hammers and toolboxes on this day, Mother's Day, and as we think of all the things that have been going on, it occurred to me to think of purses. Now, purses don't maybe universally go with mothers, but often mothers have purses, right? Before I get to that, though, I want to talk about Hermione Granger. So, some of you are familiar with Hermione Granger, the character from the Harry Potter series. In the Harry Potter series, there's a spell that you can cast. It's called an expandable charm. It makes something bigger on the inside than it appears on the outside, like a taxi that can hold 8 people across in the back seat, or a small tent that you step into and it's a 3,000 square foot house, right? But in the last movies, Hermione Granger and the rest of them are on their adventure, and she has this purse that's about like this big. And she's put an expandable charm in it. And through the adventures, you'll often see her reach up to her armpit in this tiny little purse and grab something out of it, like a book or other things like this. It is this sense of this endless supply of everything you could possibly need. Like a mother's purse, right? It was a little bit like Family Feud. I was looking online to see what are the top 10 items in a mother's purse, and I don't have them all burned into my mind. But it's interesting because they are often things to support the mom, but they are universally things to support the children. There are wipes, right? Because kids, and there are messes. I remember when we had little ones at the restaurant, we would often have little containers with Cheerios in them to kind of keep them busy. And occasionally, if we left a little bit of a disaster, we had an expression that we would leave a Cheerio tip, recognizing that there was perhaps a little more cleanup for the server than might otherwise be the case. But often there are messes, and the presence of wipes suggests that we clean up our own messes, right? And we clean up the messes of the little ones with us. We assist others in doing that work. There are wipes or tissues, perhaps. How often is there someone who maybe has a little bit of a sniffles, and we take care to help them so that they can move through the day in good form? Or perhaps it's been a hard moment. Perhaps there are tears, difficult challenges, ways in which we can care for ourselves and care for those around us. But there's all kinds of things in there. Crayons, bandages for when we get hurt. Now, in a universe where it is still difficult to find pockets in a skirt or a dress, which is a whole nother sermon, we think of all of these items that are for the benefit of those around us. It feels like we're in a moment where we need more purses and fewer hammers. It is a universe where we are hard on one another because we ourselves are hurting. And if it hasn't been easy for me, by God, it should not be easy for you. Instead of an attitude that is perhaps more like Dorcas or more like Christ would call us to be about, that says, it has been hard for me, but perhaps I can make it easier for you. These are different worldviews, and they are costly. It is not easy to make the path for someone else easier. It costs us. But when we move through life in a way where we act in that fashion, we become different people. We become the kind of people that are oriented outwards and away from ourselves, seeking and seeing those who are hurting and are in need of assistance. I remember one time when I was little, I got lost at church. It was a big church, very large, and the church was in the center of the property with parking lots on both sides. And so it was not difficult as a little guy to head out to where I thought the car had been left and realize I was on the completely wrong side of the building. Now, when I would get lost at times, not often, but when I started to look around and would see a lot of strangers, I love my dad dearly, but I would often look for someone who looked more like my mom for help. I think that's worth some reflection. As we think about life in this world in these days, it's time to start putting the hammers away. And it is time to start bringing the purses along. Amen.